All right, I read Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut, and this book is about the main character's name is Jonah or John, and Jonah kind of embarks on a journey discovering what the religion Bokononism is, and through this journey he meets a group of people who share the same thoughts as he does, and these people are the descendants of Dr. Felix Honegger, who was the Nobel laureate in physics. And through this journey and his interaction with these people, he eventually ends up on the island of San Lorenzo, where he's able to learn more about and unveil the mysteries and some myths about Dr. Felix Honegger in this fiction, in a fictionalized reading. So I think there's both a literal and a cultural apocalypse. The literal apocalypse being something that Dr. Felix Honegger was actually rumored to have invented. It was ice nine, which is a crystal that can freeze at in the hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that if it basically comes into contact with anything, it'll freeze. So if it touches a droplet of water, it can freeze. If it touches the ocean will freeze. If it touches a person, the person will freeze. So basically this can lead to the end of the world in basically another ice age. Now, the cultural apocalypse I saw was basically the clash between science and religion. So this ties into the setting. So I think the cultural apocalypse is highly centered around the setting. So the majority of the book takes place in San Lorenzo, which is an island in the Caribbean. Now, interestingly, San Lorenzo was founded when two men, Corporal McCabe and Johnson, shipwrecked onto the island, and both men pronounced Johnson to be named Bokonon, and Bokonon would be outlawed and banned, and whoever associated with any of his beliefs would basically be killed. So they have essentially established a very definitive boundary between good in the jungle with Bokonon and evil by the tyranny of McCabe in kind of the islands, in the city, in the island area. So I think this idea of creating a boundary, and for these people, another interesting thing is that one of the islanders actually admitted that he, along with most of the other San Lorenzians, actually practiced Bokononism secretly. So they basically lived in a paradox in which they practice a religion secretly and in association with no one else, a religion which can get you killed if you're seen practicing it. So I think the importance of this is that essentially in why the system was created. So I think this can tie into the idea that people need to find meaning in their lives, and through kind of a setup like this, they're able to rely on religion and kind of look for the good in Bokonon, in the jungle, in the outlawed religion that they're able to practice. So this will basically instill meaning in their lives. So I think this ties in well with the symbol, the cat's cradle. And I think a great conversation is when Newt is talking with Jonah, and when Jonah questions whether Angela, Newt's sister, is in a happy marriage, little Newt held his hands 6 inches apart and he spread his fingers. See the cat, see the cradle. I think this is what he's referencing, is that this idea that kids who kind of generally we would associate would play with the game Cat's Cradle, where you kind of form an intricate string pattern between fingers, cannot see the cat or the cradle. So Newt is referencing how this is basically a huge misnomer, and this idea of the cat's cradle is a figment of fabrication created by society that people tolerate and that people must tolerate. Um, I think another great example in the book is when um, I think when Minton is talking to Jonah, and Minton says, um, I think everything's meaningless, something like that. And then Jonah asks him, I thought you just said you believed in Jesus. And then Minton says, Jesus was just created to make people happy and to um, make people think that they were actually doing something when they were praying. So I think what he was saying is that through religion, and I think this connects actually well to what this reveals about the nature of the universe, mainly with the nature of kind of human nature. So basically, that society um, imparts names and um, kind of importance to certain things um, to instill a certain meaning when everything is basically a virtual lie. Similarly, any word or any kind of color is not really it cannot accurately describe. For example, yellow cannot accurately describe the color yellow. It's just kind of a name that society gives to this certain wavelength of light. So I think this is exactly what Minton was talking about when he said that Jesus was just created by people in order to satisfy our needs and instill meaning in our lives. Because really, it's not an actual. It's part of the intangible that we are creating for ourselves. So I would highly recommend uh, this book to others. I think it does a great job in kind of fabricating a very integrated view of the juxtaposition of science and religion. I think it does so in a way that kind of satirizes those who actually thought Ice 9 was real and thought that it would end the world. So it was very entertaining, and he actually wrote it as if it could actually happen. I think playing off of this kind of rumor that spread.